Everywhere you go, people are complaining about inflation. Voters say it's their #1 issue. Enter trustbuster Lina Khan, the youngest chair ever of the Federal Trade Commission, just 32 when she was named. She says much of the blame for the exorbitant prices on everything from food to concert tickets is widespread corporate consolidation. The FTC's mission is breaking illegal monopolies, blocking mergers that stifle competition, and protecting consumers from a system Lina Khan says is rigged against them. But she's so aggressive that she's feared and loathed in boardrooms, seen as a zealot and a bully. And yet...
The story will continue in a moment.
At town hall meetings around the country, Lina Khan is often swarmed by young people taking selfies, small business owners giving her cards, union members to whom she preaches the perils of business monopolies.
Too often, fewer and fewer companies are controlling more and more of the market. And what that means is companies can start ripping you off, hiking prices, stealing from you.
She calls these events her listening tours that she does in both red and blue districts. This one hosted by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Every time I go to the supermarket, I get sticker shock. Groceries are so expensive now. What can be done to help people like me who are worried about grocery prices? Thank you.
The FTC is currently in court trying to block the largest grocery merger in U.S. history.
Between Kroger, that owns Ralph's, and Albertsons, that owns Safeway. Together, they have nearly 5,000 locations. Khan says this merger risks raising food prices even higher than they are now. Grocery prices have gone through the roof. I believe that you think it's because of monopolies, but most economists say that it's because of supply chains caused by COVID and the Ukraine war. So which is it?
So there's no doubt that the pandemic and the war led prices to soar. What's been interesting is that even as some of those supply chain pressures have eased, prices have not come down concurrently as much.
So instead of inflation, are you contending that it's greedflation? That these monopolies are deliberately hiking the prices?
So there's a lot of discussion about what's driving the inflation. And we've actually seen some executives boast on earnings calls about how inflation is great for their bottom line.
They say that.
They have said that publicly, yes.
What about the argument that when companies merge, prices often come down because of efficiencies, scale?
But even if those efficiencies arise, if the company is not checked by competition, it won't have an incentive to pass those benefits on to the consumer because those consumers may not have anywhere else to go.
Another consumer concern, the high cost of medicine. Khan talks to independent pharmacists about the tricks and traps she says Big Pharma uses to jack up prices. For example, she zeroed in on the makers of asthma inhalers for extending their patents to keep low-cost generics off the shelves. On these inhalers, they cost $7 in France. The same exact inhaler is around $500 in the United States. Wow. Now, something's out of whack.
We agree.
Yeah.
So we took a close look at this, and we found that companies were listing patents for things like the inhaler cap or the strap on your inhaler. So nothing to do with the actual ingredients of the drug or the formulation or composition of the drug.
So this is an inhaler for asthma. Show us what the innovation was that they claimed allowed them to extend the patent.
So it's this strap that they listed a patent for, this little piece of plastic.
No. They were saying that they should be able to continue the patent. Generics can't come in for the medication because they put that strap on.
That's right.
To make sure you didn't lose the cap.
That's right.
After the FTC sent warning letters to the 4 major inhaler makers, 3 of them, including this one, dropped the price from hundreds of dollars to just $35. And 2 days ago, the FTC filed a lawsuit to bring down the price of insulin and scores of other drugs, suing 3 companies the agency says are responsible for manipulating most of the prices.
These really fundamental things about people's daily material lives are affected by things like antitrust.
But investment bankers, venture capitalists, and top CEOs say she's biased against them, that Lina Khan picks on winners because they're winners and thinks big is always bad. Actually, Khan's doggedness represents a shift in policy, a mandate to reverse decades of a hands-off strategy toward mergers and acquisitions. It was introduced by Ronald Reagan and adopted by all presidents since, including Clinton and Obama, until President Biden put an end to it.
We are now 40 years into the experiment of letting giant corporations accumulate more and more power. And what have we gotten from it? Less growth, weakened investment, fewer small businesses.
Under President Biden, the FTC and the Justice Department have unleashed a crackdown, suing scores of companies, including Ticketmaster, NVIDIA, and the Big Five: Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, Apple, and a court just deemed Google an illegal monopoly. It's a revolution, and the face of it is Lina Khan.
We're all law students, and we love you.
Can we have a selfie?
Sure.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you.
Great.
When Khan was a student here at Yale Law School, she wrote a paper called Amazon's Antitrust Paradox, contending that even though Amazon's prices are low, it's still a monopoly. This was seen as an extraordinary breakthrough, and it went viral. Less than 5 years later, President Biden made her head of the agency that polices Amazon. You know, Amazon is a very popular company. People like the convenience, the choice. The prices are pretty moderate, and they're afraid that you're going to tamper with something that's good, that they like.
Our investigation uncovered that Amazon's illegal practices were actually raising prices for consumers because it had illegally muscled out rivals, locked them out of the market in ways that if you had more competition that Amazon hadn't squashed, consumers would be even better off.
Amazon denies doing anything illegal and says if Khan wins, prices will go up. Also in the FTC's crosshairs, the issue of tech giants buying up smaller companies.
In the technology markets, we went through a couple of decades where we saw over 800 acquisitions by the 5 big players, not a single one of which was blocked. And some of those, we realized, ended up leading to significant harm. Just to give you a concrete example, there were companies that were offering Americans greater privacy, and they were promising that we're not going to use your data, we're not going to sell it, we're not going to spy on you everywhere all the time. After some of those firms were bought up by one of the big guys, all of those data privacy policies changed overnight. And so Americans lost those privacy protections.
You're talking about Facebook and WhatsApp.
Yes, that's one example of that.
She's now suing over Facebook's acquisitions of WhatsApp and Instagram. Is the mandate to reverse what's gone on for 40 years, to undo some of the mergers that were approved?
We've identified not just one merger, but a whole string of mergers that some of these large companies made that we believe were illegal, that we believe were anti-competitive.
But they were approved.
They were not blocked. They were not challenged.
But the courts don't always side with her. The FTC has lost a couple of big cases against Meta and Microsoft. Yet her cage rattling has had a chilling effect, where companies simply drop their merger plans.
Sometimes, the companies decide that they're going to abandon the merger.
If someone just says, I'm not going to go forward, that's a win.
That's right.
Obviously, the companies are complaining like hell, screaming, and they don't like you. They're afraid of you.
Well, look, we're doing our job, enforcing the law.
They are. They're afraid you're going to tie them up in court. You're going to cost them a lot of money, and they're saying it's just not worth it.
So it's important to step back and keep all of this in context. Of all the thousands of deals that are proposed every year, the FTC and DOJ collectively investigate maybe 2 or 3%.
That might not sound like a lot, but startup founders complain that she's spooking investors so much, she's actually stifling innovation. Others fear that her chasing the tech giants will cause a domino effect. Earlier this month, after it was reported that her counterpart at the Justice Department subpoenaed the chipmaker NVIDIA
shares getting slammed in the regular session.
The stock market plunged. Do you ever worry about the power that the FTC and the chairman have that could result in a destabilizing of basically the whole economy?
Of course we have to worry, but we also should worry about the destabilizing effect that can arise from companies believing that they're above the law, and then they can be reckless, take massive risks in ways that can crash the economy, and then they can get away with just a slap on the wrist, and that creates a destabilization too.
Khan can be seen as a belated reaction to the financial crisis, when the government decided banks were too big to fail. But has the pendulum swung too far? Corporations are pushing back with their own lawsuits to rein her in, setting up a possible showdown at the Supreme Court over the fate of the FTC. Should you be concerned that you are flirting with diminishing the powers that you have if the court decides you're wrong? And this court could very likely say you're wrong.
I think one challenge that agencies can face is when they shrink their own powers and authorities by not actually using the authorities that Congress has given them.
She's obviously unlikely to survive in her job if former President Trump wins, though she's admired by vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance.
Well, look, I don't agree with Lina Khan on every issue, to be clear, but I think that she's been very smart about trying to go after some of these big tech companies.
She's surprisingly popular with other MAGA Republicans. There's even a nickname for conservatives who support you. What is it?
I'll let you.
Conservatives. Conservatives. On the flip side, it's unclear she would keep her job if Vice President Harris wins. Some of her biggest donors are people who want her to get rid of you. They want you off the scene. And they're not just saying it privately, they're going on television.
Look, my focus is not listening to what CEOs are saying on TV. It's important in these jobs to really stay focused and block out a lot of the noise.
If you were asked to keep this job, would you say yes?
Obviously, those are conversations one has with one's family and that sort of thing. But
you don't want to have it with me?
But absolutely, there's so much work to be done, and it's such an honor to be in this role, and it would be an honor to have that opportunity to keep going.